There is no other video game series that has impacted me more profoundly than The Legend of Zelda. The time I spent as a kid playing Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask with my cousin are some of my oldest and most cherished gaming memories. They created a sense of adventure and discovery I scarcely thought possible at the time, and were the first games to spark my love of video game design and analysis. It is no surprise then that when I received a Nintendo Switch in 2019, the first video game console I would ever own, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was the first game I played. The sense of adventure I knew the series for was expanded several-fold, yet something felt missing. Despite the scope of this adventure, each individual part felt somehow less impactful. When it was announced that Breath of the Wild would be receiving a sequel, it was my hope, as well as the hope of many other longtime Zelda fans, that Nintendo would manage to strike a balance between the freedom of Breath of the Wild and the intentionality of the series' prior entries. When the game finally released in May of 2023, 4 entire years after it was announced, I went into it expecting big things, and, well, I have thoughts about this game. Of course, I don't mean to offend any of its major fans. Most Zelda fans, myself included, would agree. Tears of the Kingdom is a good game, a great game even. By reusing the majority of the world map and core game mechanics first introduced in Breath of the Wild, the sequel was allowed to build upon a strong and well-liked base, and smooth out many of the original's rougher aspects in the process. To some degree, that's exactly what Tears of the Kingdom did. This second iteration of the Zelda series' rebooted formula fixes, or at least addresses, many of its predecessors' problems, and in some cases improved upon Breath of the Wild's greatest features. However, for seemingly every improvement that Tears of the Kingdom makes over Breath of the Wild, another of the game's poorer aspects is left mostly intact, or one of its perfectly fine, perhaps even well-designed elements is made worse. I could talk at length, as many others have, about each of these changes, exclusions, and additions, the good, the bad, and everything in between, but for the sake of time, I'll only discuss some of the most significant examples, the ones that stuck out to me the most. Now, I shouldn't get ahead of myself here. As I said, Tears of the Kingdom does improve upon many of Breath of the Wild's strongest elements. In no case is this more clear than in the design of the game's world. For the most part, both games utilize the same map, but despite this, Tears of the Kingdom manages to make the land of Hyrule feel fresh and new, even for players who have already spent hundreds of hours exploring every inch of this world in its prior iteration. All of the shrines and towers from the previous game are gone, replaced by an entirely new set of shrines and towers. Large, fortified monster outposts have been dotted about the map, in addition to the small camps and tree forts seen in Breath of the Wild. Winding caves are everywhere, and floating islands fill the previously empty sky, both complete with never-before-seen enemy varieties. Most importantly, deep chasms now cover the ground, leading into the dark depths, an area equivalent in size to the entire overworld. In Breath of the Wild, there was almost guaranteed to be some objective in view of the player at any given moment, whether it be a shrine, tower, stable, or any other landmark, ensuring that there was always something to do. This is made even more true in Tears of the Kingdom. At most points during your playthrough of this game, you're likely to have some primary goal in mind, such as reaching Rito Village, the location of one of the 4 main dungeons. You set a course for the northeast, following one of the main roads leading out of Lookout Landing. You walk for a little while until... What's that over there? Oh, it's a tower! You continue to travel in the direction of your objective, but decide to take a short detour. The game does this constantly, subtly nudging the player to spend time exploring the areas they might never otherwise see by placing secondary objectives just off of the beaten path. You climb up to the tower and activate it, launching you into the air, and there's some sky islands not too far away. Is that a shrine over there? Well, might as well check that out. Oh, wait, I can do a really cool dive into that chasm over there. I'll activate this light route here real quick, send back to the surface, and I'm on the opposite corner of the map. This is what made Breath of the Wild such an engaging game to play, and it returns in full force here in Tears of the Kingdom, even in spite of the largely recycled map. However, after a certain point, many of this game's objectives begin to feel somewhat pointless to work towards. Tears of the Kingdom, like its predecessor, is truly the epitome of it's about the journey, not the destination. There are hundreds of objectives to complete of varying levels of scope and importance, and for some players, that alone is sufficient. The experience of traversing the game world and seeing all it has to offer is enjoyable enough on its own. For others, however, something just feels missing. Upon completion, many of these tasks don't provide the player with any meaningful reward that will aid them on their quest. All you get for exploring every cave and collecting all 147 bubble gems is a short cutscene. All you get for taking 509 photographs to complete the Hyrule Compendium is yet another paraglider fabric to stash away in your inventory and never use. All you get for finding all the 1,000 Koroks is Hestu's gift. Admittedly, this game is far better in this regard than was its predecessor. At the very least, many of this game's side quests give the player something permanent, which Breath of the Wild scarcely did. Regardless, when comparing either game to some of the Zelda series' previous entries, the stark difference becomes immediately apparent. In Majora's Mask, for example, a game famous for its side content, almost every single item that the player can collect increases Link's strength and arsenal of abilities, as well as assists in the completion of other side quests later on. Now, of course, most players wouldn't bother spending the time necessary to collect all of the bubble gems or Korok seeds anyway, even if there was a worthy reward. However, even some of the rewards that the vast majority of players are to acquire through completion of the game's main quest are made rather lackluster by the extreme impracticality of actually using them. As in Breath of the Wild, reaching the end of each dungeon affords the player the signature ability of the corresponding champion, or in this case, Sage. In the first game, all you have to do to activate any of these abilities is press a single button. According to Fitt's law, which states that the time it takes to reach a target is the function of the size of and distance to the target, this is good design. Take the Urbosa's Fury ability, for example. Just move your thumb from the right stick up to the Y button, hold it for a second, and BAM! Cool lightning attack. It's quick, it's easy, and, well, what about Tears of the Kingdom? Let's look at Riju's ability, an attack similar to Urbosa's Fury, but for the bow this time. First, you have to look around to try and locate Riju's avatar. Next, walk up to her and press A. And oops, seems like it took too long and she walked away. Let's look around again and, aha, there she is. Walk up to her and, whoop, a different Sage got in the way. Go into the pause menu and disable him. Continue walking towards Riju and press A. And congratulations, you're almost there. Now, aim your bow, wait for the yellow circle on the ground to engulf your target, let your arrow fly, and BAM! Cool lightning attack again. Now go into the pause menu and disable the rest of the sages to play the game properly. As far as I know, violations of Fitt's law can't be punished criminally, but this game has certainly made me wish they could be. One of the largest criticisms that Breath of the Wild received was regarding its storytelling, and, well, yes, the story is extremely simple and certainly won't be winning any awards. It worked for the kind of game that Breath of the Wild was. Still, many Zelda fans, myself included, were hoping that Nintendo would place a bit more emphasis on the story in Tears of the Kingdom, and they did, kind of. If Breath of the Wild's story was inoffensive, the story in Tears of the Kingdom is actively detrimental to the overall game experience. It's true, there is more story this time around. However, what starts as a seemingly epic and in-depth narrative quickly devolves into unintentional comedy as the game begins to repeat the exact same information several times over, just in case you happen to miss it the first few times. Soon after starting the game, the player is likely to come across a dragon tear, which shows a memory similar to those found in Breath of the Wild. Well, I guess we know where Zelda went. Wait, so dragon tears, so Zelda's memories. Did Zelda turn into a dragon? Well, I guess that means all the Zelda apparitions observed performing evil deeds must not actually be Zelda after all. Well, who would have thought? Despite this revelation, the player must sit through dozens of hours of gameplay before any of the other characters begin to acknowledge it at all, treating it as a major shock once the truth is finally revealed. Well, in other news, have you heard the legends of the Secret Stones and the Imprisoning War? No? Well, don't you worry, because you'll have the privilege of watching 4 nearly identical cutscenes explaining it to you after each dungeon. As fantastic as these open-world Zelda games are, to me they've always felt off somehow. Maybe it's just my nostalgia talking, it probably is, but without the iconic story structure, dungeons, items, and other elements that the series has become known for, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom just seem incomplete. Great games, but not Zelda games. Going forward, it's my hope that Nintendo will someday be able to strike that perfect balance between the new and the old. Never mind, this game's perfect.